Clayton, I think I start with you this week, and I think a lot of people, especially those who are getting BG&E bills, are going to see a big increase. I guess starting September 1, it's looking like they can expect their bill to go up somewhere in the area of $16 a month. And we just found out that regional grid prices jumped like 22% over the last couple of months. More recently, our president has basically canceled the windmills that were planning to go outside of Ocean City. It seems like it's a bit of a mess. What's your take?
This was a self-created mess. Uh, I I don't disagree with clean energy, with wind energy, with solar energy at all. But the rate at which it has been proposed to put up exceeded the power generation that was taken down. And the traditional power generation sources, the ones based on fossil fuels and natural gas, are decommissioned. Brandon Shores is due to be decommissioned in 2029. I think that although wind is a good idea, I don't think it's perfected to the point where it can be relied upon for cheap, affordable energy. That being said, taking your part of the question about the president, he was elected, drill baby drill. That's what we're going to do. We're going to unleash the gold underneath our feet, the black gold that's there, and that is what he ran on. That's what he's delivering. The agenda does not include offshore wind, and I think although in the future there's a space for it, right now it's not prime time. It's not ready for prime time, I should say. The solar farms that have been proposed with the taking away of local zoning authority and putting it into public service commission has angered a lot of people in the rural areas, because I believe it makes sense that we first put solar panels over impervious surfaces in buildings before you do prime farmland. The rate at which we're going, if we don't do something with traditional power sources and or bringing nuclear energy into the forefront and in an expedited manner, we're in for a lot of problems. I think by 2029, 2030, the average household is going to look at $800 to $1,000 a month electric bills as a matter of due course. I think this was preventable, and we need to do something now to correct it. Those are my thoughts on that. I think that the president was elected to do what he needed to do. I understand the hundreds of millions of dollars that were dedicated to the offshore wind and that fabrication plant that was going to Sparrows Point, but he pulled the plug, which he had the right to do. For its part, in some, Maryland created a mess for Maryland. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Delaware surrounding us, they don't have the problem that we do. 40% of our electricity is imported, and that needs to change.
Len, you've been one of the first to bring this up before on one of our previous shows, but what's changed?
Well, Dave, I want to just echo what Clay has said. I do agree with the sum and substance of his remarks, and it's important to recognize that this is, in fact, a demon of our own design. What Clay said at the outset is salient, that we have shut down a series of traditional fossil fuel plants around the state. Brandon Shores has had a stay of execution, for want of a better term, but we shut down Morgantown. We shut down Chalk Point down in southern Maryland. We shut down the Dickerson plant in Montgomery County. And as Clay said, we simply don't have the renewable energy infrastructure to satisfy our lofty standards on net carbon zero. These are the industries of the future, and good for us. We absolutely need it to combat climate change, but they're not ready yet. And now, given the policy changes that are coming out of Washington, we really have no assurance when and if these new sources, such as offshore wind, will be back in favor, and the timetable with which they could become a truly viable baseline energy source here in the state of Maryland. I want to talk about two other things. One is the presence of so-called distribution charges on your BG&E bill, right? So it's broken out. So there's There's the amount that you pay, which is directly tied to your usage volume. And then there's a section called distribution charges. And that lower category, distribution, is flat. It's constant. And it's not based on how much you actually use. I have a friend who lives in Timonium and was down in North Carolina over the summer helping his father move, spent only 4 days in the month of June here in the state of Maryland. He came back, got his June energy bill, and it was over $500, mostly because of these distribution charges. And that is the loophole, if you will, through which BG&E and these other major companies actually, it's a catch-all for all their quote-unquote infrastructure costs, their top-of-the-line vehicles, their state-of-the-art gas equipment. No expense is spared because those costs will be absorbed by the ratepayers. Okay, so there's really not much discretion that the ratepayer has, because whether you turn your thermostat to 75 or 65, you're still going to be hit with these distribution charges. And then the second piece is the passage of Senate Bill 1. And we've talked about that on this show in the past. This is the bill that the legislature passed in 2024. It took effect earlier this year, and it establishes an absolute monopoly within the electricity and gas sectors for the big utility companies. So when you, me, Clay go to shop, we don't have a menu of providers from which to choose. We are herded into Delmarva Power or BG&E or Pepco, depending on where we live. And monopolies, no matter whether we're talking about cars, toothpaste, or electricity, monopolies within an industry lead to higher costs, severe declines in quality of service, and predatory corporate conduct toward the customers. And that's what we're seeing right now. And so we really do need, in addition to more independent sources of generation, we need a public service commission that will actually stand up and say no to the big utility providers. And we need to repeal Senate Bill 1 to bring in true retail competition to serve as a check and balance on the utility monopoly.
Clayton, yesterday, the governor declared that he was going to run again. How does all this affect his campaign and maybe in your case, Ed Hale's campaign? How do you leverage this kind of crisis, for lack of a better word?
Well, I think the energy generation crisis here in the state of Maryland is one of the top, if not the top, issue of the day. It's felt across the board. Democrats, Republicans, rich, poor, business people, homeowners, they all feel this crisis, which is only going to get worse. The leverage for my candidate, Ed Hale, is Governor Moore helped create this mess. The Green Agenda took over. There was no stopping it. They had a supermajority in the legislature that pushed it forward, including, like Len was referring to, Senate Bill 1, which I think needs to be repealed, was a total disaster. I don't know how he could explain his way out of this other than he fully supports what's going on. And the best piece of campaign mail, direct mail that Ed Hale can have is that bill coming in every month. And I hope everybody looks at it and says, thank you, Governor, for these high prices on electricity. That being said, the guy's running for president. I don't care what his denials were. He's running for president. He's out there fundraising. He's out there on national television. He can deny all the way to the bank. All indications are that I've seen, not just his words, I've seen is the guy's running for president, and he needs to be present in Annapolis to take care of problems like this electric crisis, but I don't see that happen.
So, Len, pretend that you're giving Governor Wes Moore some advice. I mean, how do you deflect this kind of severe criticism?
So, well, now the issue of the day right now, and I agree with Clay that this election coming up in 2026 and the re-election or the 2028 presidential election, it's going to be ultimately about the economy, right? And specifically the amount of money that is in the consumer wallet at the time they go to the polls, because ultimately the economy is defined by one's own personal financial situation and whether it's better or worse under a particular elected official's leadership. So, but right now, the issue is crime and violent crime, property crime. And I actually think the governor did a really good job this past Friday. He has successfully triangulated, if you will, between Muriel Bowser in the District of Columbia and, say, Gavin Newsom in California. Muriel Bowser, who is the head of a federal city, a federal enclave, doesn't have home rule. She actually has to work with the president and Congress in what I would characterize as a position of strategic acquiescence. She doesn't have many options. So that's why she's going along with the governor and or the president and his nonsensical idea of putting the National Guard on the streets of Georgetown and DuPont Circle and U Street. On the other side, you have Gavin Newsom, who has become a very high profile, very performative opponent to President Trump and to his policies, but he's doing it with kind of a funny, offbeat, quirky sense of humor. And I think what Wes has done is put himself right in the middle, where he is also, established a position of principled opposition to Donald Trump's disastrous crime control policies, but he has also done it with a sense of due seriousness. And he has come out with an alternative proposal of his own, which is to actually complement local law enforcement with state law enforcement on our streets. The National Guard is not trained to do law enforcement. They're just not. It's a different skill set, requires different equipment, it requires different bodies of knowledge. The Maryland State Police, working alongside Baltimore City Police and local county police and other hotspots, that's a smart approach, and it reflects a sensible middle ground between the two extremes. If I'm advising Governor Moore, I'm telling him to do exactly what he's doing right now and to shift the locus of debate as quickly as humanly possible away from crime, which is one of Donald Trump's stronger issues, and back to his ruinous handling of the U.S. economy, which is his weakest point, if the polls are to be believed, and which has had a disproportionate negative impact on the state of Maryland.
So, Clay, very quickly, what were your hot takes this week?
I got to give one to the middle-aged guys. Aaron Rodgers had his debut with the Pittsburgh Steelers, threw 4 touchdowns. 41 years old. He's my winner of the week. I just got to say that was impressive. Not that he's going to be the next Tom Brady, but chalk one up for the old guys. And my loser, staying on my football theme, was that heartbreaking loss that the Ravens had. That last 5-10 minutes was just, it was unbelievable to watch, but it was just heartbreaking in the end. We should have won that game. I don't know what chemistry changed between the first 3 quarters and that fourth quarter, but my goodness, the Ravens should do better. They need to step up. We can't have more losses like that one.
And Len, how about you?
I'm along the same lines as Clay. I think the winner and the loser both come from the world of Baltimore sports. The Baltimore Orioles on Saturday night with that amazing comeback after they had been no-hit by Dodgers pitcher Yamamoto for 8 2/3 inning. Jackson Holliday breaks up the no-hitter, breaks up the shutout with a home run, and then through just this most improbable sequence of events, they come back to win the game. And I think the last 15 minutes of that Oriole game on Saturday encapsulates what makes baseball the greatest sport God ever created on this green earth. Biggest loser? It has to be the Ravens. That was there are just no words. That was a collapse of epic proportions. It came at the worst possible time for the franchise when it and Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh are trying to shed this reputation as an uber talented team that can't win in the big moments and cannot close out games. It was a devastating loss at the worst possible time, and we'll see how they bounce back. But this is a tough one. It's going to stick around for a while.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Clay, I know you're off on a well-deserved holiday.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. Len, I hope to see you next week.